Russia is collapsing. As crazy as that might sound, it isn't an exaggeration. In fact, Moscow is so certain about its demise that it decided to wage a full-scale conflict on Ukraine, the largest war of its kind on European soil since World War II. But why is Russia so hell-bent on war? Ask many people this question, and you will likely receive many different answers. Don't get me wrong, there's no denying that the topic is a complex one. However, there is one hidden, major motivation that influences every decision the Kremlin is making, and it can be stated in one word: demographics. This is a pyramid chart showing the demographics of Russia as of 2020. It visualizes the birth rate of the nation over time, as it displays the number of individuals within different age groups. A very uncomfortable reality for Russia is apparent. They have far fewer people in the young cohorts than people in older cohorts, and the largest groups are very quickly approaching an elderly age. Now, Russia is hardly unique in this trend. I mean, look at a demographic chart of nearly any advanced first world country, and you'll find that it's very similar to Russia's, with an aging population that vastly outnumbers the younger ones. But no other European states are warring, however, so what's the deal with Russia? And how's this all even related? Well, it can be hard to appreciate just how much of a problem demographic collapse is for a nation. Every aspect of running a country is affected. The hard reality is that a nation needs people in order to do anything, and to have one without people is like having a car without fuel. What do you do if you're in a car and you're running low on fuel? You do whatever you can while you still can. This is why Russia invaded Ukraine when they did. This is the only time for at least the next few decades that they'll have a fighting age population that they can sort of spare. Demographics does more than just explain the timing of Moscow's invasion though. It also helps explain why they are waging war at all. Take a look at this topography map of Eastern Europe. Notice anything about this area between here and here? It's all green and flat, making up what is known as the Eastern European Plain. The most important areas of Russia, from St. Petersburg through Moscow to the Volga region, are all within these 2 million square miles of nothing but plains. This means there are practically no natural barriers that stop an invading army from attacking through their western borders and reaching the Russian heartland, which we saw with Operation Barbarossa from Nazi Germany. Russia, or I guess the Soviet Union during this time, defeated them, but only after suffering catastrophic human losses. This was during their near peak of fighting age population as well, so they were able to take it. After the Second World War, Russia re-established its control over the rimland in Eastern Europe and Central Asia, hoping they would protect its heartland. But the disintegration of the Soviet Union made it all for nothing. This is something Russia's been dealing with for a long time. Even former Empress Catherine the Great said, "I have no way to defend my borders, but to extend them," all the way back in 1783. As it stands now, if Russia were to be invaded by a superpower, it would be almost impossible to defend against. And so, from Moscow's paranoid point of view, they have two choices: keep their current borders and potentially perish to NATO while their fighting age population shrinks, or wage war and expand their borders to defendable geography while they still can. It's clear which path they've chosen, but even if Russia succeeds in their annexation of parts of Ukraine, everything it would have cost them would only sink the country further into its demographic problems. Let me explain. One of the biggest problems for nations with an aging demography is the slow economic collapse that follows. Even with all the automation we have today, you still need people in order to make goods as well as people to consume them. And when you have neither of those, not only does your domestic economy collapse, but so does your value as an international trading partner. Because of all this, it's fair to say Russia's collapse is arguably speeding up drastically because of the war with Ukraine. Up to 200,000 Russian troops have died so far, many of them young, but also many of them poor. Of the 26 areas with the highest known rates of conscription, 23 had income levels below the national average. Russia's military drafts primarily targeted low-income ethnic Russians from remote and rural regions all over the country. This is intended obviously because a lack of media outlets and protest activity makes it easier for them to enforce recruitment orders and to appease the regional leaders. The problem with this though is a lot of these cities are responsible for agriculture and resource extraction. Take for example the Krasnoyarsk Krai region, which has the highest reported share of mobilized reservists nationwide. The region is among the richest of Russia's in natural resources, with more than 95% of their platinum concentrated there, 80% of their nickel, 75% of their cobalt. Really, I can go on. And it has very rich land like the Minusинsk Basin to go with it. Well, the recruitment drive there has been so vast that there's now labor shortages. This is reflected in regions like Buryatia and Dagestan too. These young people living in remote towns are what keeps them from turning into ghost towns. So when you take them away, then what happens? Now, I'm not going to say the region is about to collapse or anything, but when you heavily recruit people from sparse areas almost no one lives in, yet is important for agriculture and natural resource extraction to basically keep the country going, it's a dangerous game. But even if this loss of just 200 or so thousand troops seems minuscule within Russia's total population of around 144 million people, the reality is Russia has lost a lot more people than just their soldiers who've died in war. See, regardless of who attacks who, there's always people fleeing countries involved in war. Since the start of the invasion of Ukraine, at least 1 million Russians have fled the motherland, moving to countries like Turkey, Georgia, Kazakhstan, and Finland. This includes economic migrants, conscientious objectors, and some political refugees. The thing is though, if they can afford to leave the country, then they're probably educated too. It's estimated that around 12,000 millionaires left Russia in 2022, as well as almost 100,000 tech workers, or 10% of the country's entire tech workforce. So when the young, most educated, and most ambitious people leave, it suggests a major brain drain is happening. All this does is leave Russia with older and less educated people remaining in the country, not fighting, not really contributing to the economy anymore, and really just aging. This just further exacerbates their problems. I mean, even before the war, Putin's been offering thousands of dollars for families to have more kids, even going as far as to give a hero's medal to women who have 10 or more kids. But this of course basically never happens. As a result of Russia's low birth rate, which currently stands at around 1.5 kids per woman, far away from the required 2.1 needed to just replace a population, let alone grow, they've long relied on immigration from ex-Soviet republics. There's two problems with this now though. The first being that the median age of immigrants is now higher than the median age of the general Russian population, which only hurts more than it helps. And the second being that since this war, Russia has become a much less attractive country to immigrate to. In recent years, they've stepped up their efforts by encouraging ethnic Russians everywhere, from Ukraine to Uruguay, to immigrate. But now, due to the fear of being drafted, an authoritarian regime, and a now crippled economy due to so many sanctions, it's all been for nothing. What comes of this remains to be seen. But what we do know is that for a solution to this demographic problem, another angle to this war has come into play. That is, to fix their aging population, simply take Ukrainian kids. Now, this is of course genocide according to Article 2, Section E of the 1948 Genocide Convention, and Article 6, Section E of the Rome Statute, which established the International Criminal Court. But it's being done. Russian state media organization Interfax reported that they had evacuated more than 307,000 Ukrainian children from the territory of Ukraine by June 2022. What this really means though is that they forcibly abducted that many children, deported them to Russian-controlled territory, put them in so-called summer camps meant to strip them of their Ukrainian identity, known as Russification, and then awarded them to Russian parents. Remember as well, this was only by June. That number is estimated to be as high as 700,000 children today. They're recruiting the girls to make more children and the boys to turn into future soldiers against any potential threat. From Russia's perspective, maybe this is all worth it. From a purely numbers standpoint, more kids have been taken than soldiers that have been killed. But of course, this doesn't take into account everyone who immigrated, the brain drain that follows, and the fact that people who are being killed are the future of important remote towns. Even more so, if Ukraine can get all their children back, then Russia's demise will be even worse than expected, and the war that they so justified as being necessary for their future survival may very well be the thing that ends up destroying them.